you're going to hurt no matter what. Like it's going to hurt. That's a given. It's the question of, in your mind, can you convince yourself that running 30 seconds to a minute per mile faster, like just pushing a little harder, it will not make you feel any worse after this. Like you're going to feel destroyed no matter what. And so it's really for that, I'd say like maybe the last third of the race is when, no matter the distance, like you won't hurt anymore if you push harder. So can you really just mentally toughen up and just go for it? I found in my 2024 racing season, honestly, the number one thing I would have changed is just been mentally tougher, because training went well, I felt good, nutrition was good. Like with 10 hours into the race, I was on the paces I wanted and it still fell apart. It's like, what would I have changed? It's like, honestly, just kind of suck it up and go. So even competing at the level I feel I am, it's still hard. Like it's not something that comes intuitive. And so I think to say I have an exact science of how to solve it would be a lie, but I found you kind of just internally have to make peace with where you're at the end of a race. Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm a renegade.
Renegade is what happens when two ordinary friends dare to practice the lost art of conversation to better understand what it means to be a runner, a human. Should we follow convention and play by the rules? Or would it be better to trust our guts? Each episode, you'll learn from the experts, the underdogs, the elites and non-elites, those doing big things, all in that curious quest of being just a little bit better tomorrow. In a world of runners, be a renegade. Today, we have a force of nature joining us, ultra runner Matt Seidel. This guy's a rising star who's been tearing up the trails with a ferocity that's equal parts inspiring and downright mind-blowing since making his jump into ultra running just a couple years back. Matt's 2024, just a jaw-dropping third place finish at the legendary JFK 50 mile, the oldest ultra marathon in the United States, and a 34th overall at the Hoka UTMB Mount Blanc CCC. He's a former D1 college runner turned trail beast, and he's not just running races, he's rewriting what's possible for a newcomer in this game. What's next for Matt? He's got his sights set on crushing it in 2025 with big races on the horizon. Think rugged, soul-testing ultras that's going to push him to the edge and back. This is a guy who's all about the journey, the grind, and that relentless pursuit of the extraordinary. So lace up, lean in, and let's get into it with Matt, ultra runner, trailblazer, and a true renegade of the sport. Hey Renegades, we have something exciting to share with you today, and it's all about revolutionizing the way we think about footwear. Enter Peluva, a brand that's setting new standards in the world of shoes. What makes Peluva unique? It's their commitment to foot health, with a design that mimics the natural movement of your feet. We're talking about shoes that give your toes the freedom to move independently, enhancing your balance and strength with every step. If you're looking to develop stronger, healthier feet, Peluva stands out for its zero-drop design, promoting a natural posture if you're ready to walk, run, or just stand in a way that your body will thank you for. This isn't just a shoe, it's an upgrade to your daily life. Give your feet the comfort and style they deserve with Peluva. And as a special offer, you can use the code RUNEGADE for 15% off your order. That's RUNEGADE, and you'll get 15% off your order. Check them out at peluva.com. Your feet will thank you. Harvey, we have Matt Seidel joining the Renegade Podcast.
Matt is an amazing runner, and with some of the research that I've done recently, I know what Matt can run a 50-mile race in. I have a hard time running my 5K in that same pace.
Well, you remember, I think it was 2022. You and I, we went to New York. Actually, no, it was 2023.
2022 was our first Chicago.
We traveled to Chicago and we went for a Path Projects personal best shakeout run with Flores. And guess who's there? There was this guy who was trying to qualify for the Olympics. It's like, we're there for a shakeout run. We're thinking, we're going to run a 4-hour marathon. And some dude shows up, going to try to qualify for the Olympics. And we met him. It was Matt. Do you remember that?
When you told me that, I was thinking, I think I'm at the wrong shakeout run.
Me too. I'm like, we're out of here. Floors.
You're what? Are you sure this guy is trying to qualify for the Olympics?
He probably thinking the same thing. Like, oh my God, what are these jokers doing here?
Who are these guys slowing me down?
But he was a really nice guy. He ran with us. We did like a 5K shakeout along Lake Michigan. The wind was blowing. We talked a little bit. He slowed down and ran with us. And then he went and he had a tough Chicago, I believe, but he still had an amazing time. But he didn't achieve his exact goal. And that same year, in 2022, he ran the JFK in 5 hours and 41 minutes, the JFK 50 miler. And then you flash forward 2 years later, he ran the JFK in 5:29. And I think that was good for second place.
That was actually third place.
That was third place. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
But
We'll
call it second. We're going to call it second place.
That has to be second. In my eyes, that's definitely first. That's got to be a world record.
It's a world record. Matt, it's a world record. And you know what? At 5:29, like there are years that would have won the JFK. Something big happened in 2024. We're going to talk to Matt to see what is happening in trail running and racing where they're getting these magical performances. Record times are dropping. I'd like to get his insight into what he thinks it is.
He's definitely got some kind of magic, and I'm hoping he can share something with us.
Well, whether you are running the JFK in 5 hours and 29 minutes or having a shakeout run with your Path Projects crew, there is an athletic brew for you. I like the 5 grams of carbs and I like the 25 calories. You can have a couple of these and you don't feel bloated afterwards.
And by the way, I bought my athletic brew this time with your discount code, Todd. I'm sure your listeners should take advantage of it too. It's definitely, I believe it was 20% off. Great discount code, free shipping. Well worth it.
Yeah. We'll put that in the show notes. I believe the code is TODDM20. So TODDM20. And you get 20% off your order. And I'm glad the discount code worked. Oh, that's good. That's good.
That's good. That's the first time I think I've had the light. That is good.
Well, this originally was episode 30. And then I had the snafu with the time.
Todd loves his times. He always seems to forget that the guests are not all in Eastern Standard Time. So if he happens to schedule anybody, make sure you ask him, what time zone are we in here?
It's so true. And you know what? It's not that I don't think about it. I constantly think about it. I just forget to put it in writing.
Yeah.
So sorry, Matt. I'm sorry for the last mess up.
And I think last time we tried this, you thought, hey, I'm going to text Matt and see what's going on. And he texts you back. He goes, I'm actually out on a run right now.
He was. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to get nervous. I started to get nervous right away. I'm like, oh, it's probably Pacific time or Mountain time or. That's great. And guess what? We got Matt here. So let me let Matt in. Matt.
How are you, Matt?
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How about yourselves?
Hey, doing great. Doing great. We got the time worked out. That means that's the best thing we got so far.
Yeah. Matt, I'm a little embarrassed. We did our hair the same. Yeah, I hate that, but you know. Matt,
we met you. I think we were just talking about this. I think it was 2022 at the Chicago Marathon. Mm-hmm. We met up for the Path Projects, shakeout run. And you always stand out to us because here you come, you're coming to the shakeout run with Flores and Path Projects. You're unassuming, you're in great shape. And then you start talking to us and you're out. You're gunning to qualify for the Olympic trials, I believe. Is that correct?
That was correct. We fell a little bit short, or not a little bit, way short, but the desire to go for it was there. And the desire to go for it was. The fitness was pretty close. Just the execution wasn't quite 100%. But
well, Harvey and I we never have that problem. We usually everything falls apart during our races. But we were joking because we thought we were at the wrong shakeout run. The second you told us you were trying to qualify for the Olympic trials, we're like, did we come to the right shakeout run?
Who is this guy?
Yeah. You know what? That was a tough day. I remember the sun came out and it killed me on that course. I think my pride is still on the course. I have to go back and get it one day.
It's a great excuse to go back to Chicago.
Yeah,
That's right.
I think Chicago is that kind of race. It sneaks up on people that you don't realize it. You start out the morning when the sun's not quite out, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden you get about halfway through that race and you're like, "What in the hell just happened?" The sun's beating down and you're just cooking.
Oh yeah.
But speaking of just cooking, your 2 JFK 50 times. So in 2022, I was looking, you ran JFK in 5:41, which is an amazing time. And then last year in 2024, you dominated it. You ran it in 5:29. It's unbelievable. All these record performances that we're seeing in these big races, like what do you think the secret sauce is? Like what are people tapping into that's causing these record-breaking performances? Because like 5:29, that's an amazing time. And I think what was the winning time was like 20 minutes, a little bit.
Like
Which is
5:09, which is kind of foolish to even think about before the
like
race.
when you think, yeah, that's a really thing. Like, so before the race, was that kind of time even in your mind that someone's capable of running
So
sub
yeah,
5:10?
kind of answer that in two parts. I'll start with JFK and then take it to like the larger point. I actually, especially for long distance races, like any ultra distance, I try to have a time in mind that I'm shooting for. Obviously, a million things can change, and I'm by no means like dead set it's that or bust. But for that race, I set what I thought was almost suicide pace, like extremely ambitious, would be the greatest day ever, and I set 5:10 as the goal. So if I even had done that, I still wouldn't even have won. So, but that being said, I knew that was the caliber of effort that I thought would take to win, and this is actually maybe 3 straight races for me where I didn't necessarily think I would do it, but I put down a time that's like, if you wanted to win the race, this is what I think it would take. And this was going back like my 3 big ultras I've done most recently. That's the Canyons 100K, the CCC 100K out in France, and then JFK most recently. And my target time that I had in my head was like within a minute or two of the winner each time. So I feel like I'm really good at predicting what it'll take to win the races. Executing, whole different beast. But to say I knew it would be a foolish time, I did. I didn't quite know how foolish, but and to speak to your point about like the sport as a whole, I think especially, and I'll say the ultra distance in particular, I think running as a whole is just getting across the board faster. And you even have the like American half record going down this week for the men. Like you're just seeing
That's
these
right.
races, like people really target them and go for it. And there's a multitude of factors, with technology, nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. But I think within the ultra space, you're getting a category of people that I feel I'm a part of, by no means like representative of, but a lot of like lifelong athletes who are actually choosing to pursue this thing as something they want to do. And so you're getting a combination of people who are really fired up to do it, with people who are experienced with it, and people that just come in with maybe like a different load of talent than the sport is used to. And if you get all those people together, you put them in a race, and instead of having like 1 or 2 fast people trying at the front, you have a group of 15 to 20 people. Eventually 1 or 2 of those is going to go off and do a crazy performance. So I think he's just kind of mass numbers are pursuing the sport, and you're seeing these things happen.
Well, we talked a little bit with Carl Metzler. He was on an episode a couple of times ago, and he was talking about the same type of things. And he was saying that, when he came into the sport, he was an athlete, like a good athlete, but nowhere near like a track athlete or anything like that. And it was all done, I would say, on what did he say? Like on the cheap and low, he would drive to the race in his pickup truck the day before, hit the race, come home, because it was just something that they loved to do. It was never like a mindset of training for something. So maybe you're right. Like when you're focused and you hack up the time and you come from a base that has some speed, and maybe we can even start there, Matt, because no one runs these times, finding running later in their life. What's your running journey? Like, how did it start? And, and how did your evolution, how is it going and growing?
Oh yeah. So I'm 28 years old right now, and I take that age in particular because I, as of the last year, have finally hit the point where I've been running competitively for over half my life. That was,
Okay.
at a certain point, it's like, oh yeah, this is just what I do. So yeah, I found running for the first time in high school. Honestly, not even by choice. I guess it was my choice. My parents really pushed me to do cross country, and they're like, "Oh, you'll enjoy it." No expectation of being good by any means, but it turns out I just happened to be not bad at it. So I, ran varsity for my high school, was good enough to then run in college. I ran for Yale University, which is a D1 program, kind of on the lower end of the D1. By no means you're like, competing for nationals, but still very competitive. People take it very seriously. And so I spent 8 years pursuing, traditional cross country and track. So very different than what I'm doing now. But the idea of racing, the idea of training was all really fun. I did the kind of 2 mile in high school and then stepped up to the 3K and 5K in college. I actually laugh now because I did a 10K for a couple of years and thought that was too long for me. I don't like that. So now the fact that I pursue these really long distances is a little funny, but of course 10K on a track is very different than a, ultra marathon on a trail. But I graduated from college in 2018. I knew that I wanted to keep running, but I honestly, it was pretty burnt out in a good way. Like I enjoyed my 8 years of cross country and track, but that didn't call to me to keep doing. So I took a year and a half off of any serious competitive running. I was in grad school. It was kind of a good time to just zone out, tune out. But then in 2020, I had started my first full-time job. I had kind of had this itch to get back into something. So, I signed up for a few races here and there, and then poof, the pandemic started. And all of a sudden there was like no racing of any kind. So after a while of doing more, honestly, backpacking style trips, like just getting out in nature, I was like, I like running and I really like just being out here for long, sustained periods of time. So what if I combine these two things, combine that with kind of meeting some friends who introduced me to ultra running, and then the rest is kind of history. Like a year later, I signed up for my first race, and that was fall of 2021. And really since then have kind of been in this continuous block of training and pursuing races and still really enjoying it. So yeah, I guess the 2025 season will be in what is my mind like the fourth year of my competitive ultra running career.
The fourth year of your competitive ultra running career.
Yeah. So yeah, ultra running as a whole honestly still feels new to me. It's still, in 4 years, I'm starting to feel like I'm experienced and know what I'm doing, but I still enjoy that it feels new and fresh and like I'm still learning something with every race. But the idea of competitive running, has been there for, 15 years now. So it's, to that regards, like training, running with friends, really pushing myself at races, that just kind of comes naturally to me at this point.
Now, Matt, I want to go back to your pace here, just because I don't think the listeners will really understand how fast you are. So I'm picking on the JFK 50 last year. You ran this in 5 hours, 29 minutes, 34 seconds. So if my calculations are correct, that is 6 minutes, 34 seconds per mile. We're Canadian. That's 4 minutes and 6 seconds per kilometer. Now I'm going to break that down just a little bit for people that are maybe not understanding
going into the
this.
Science here.
A marathon, if you ran a marathon in that pace, that's 2 hours, 52 minutes, and 3 seconds. A half marathon, 1 hour, 26 minutes, 1 second. A 10K in 40 minutes, 48 seconds. And a 5K, 20 minutes and 24 seconds. You know that people are running as hard as they can to get a 20-minute 5K? And a lot of people will never get that in their life. People, this guy is fast.
He's fast. And what I'll layer one thing on there too is I've done the JFK twice and the Appalachian Trail. Matt will have to get into this. How do you run the Appalachian Trail? That thing, I lost 2 toenails on that trail and I don't even know how to run it. So
it's funny. They, at the award ceremony at the end of the race, they were more talking about David Sinclair, the winner's time. But the announcer had said, like, by my most generous of estimations, like the Appalachian Trail to even the fastest end, and then the slower you go, the even more time it would subtract. Like for even the top end, the Appalachian Trail adds like 15 to 20 minutes, and that's if you're running 5-hour pace. So yeah, it's to even say like that pace is even not even telling the full story, because that first 15 miles is extremely rocky, and you can't really turn your brain off and just run. You have to be locked into every step you're doing.
Locked in, and then you got that incline on the fire road, which I'm assuming you train and you train for that incline, but by the time you get to the top of it, are your legs just screaming? Is your lungs screaming, or do you get to that top of the climb like, hey, this ain't too bad? Like, Walk us through
And
that.
which climb in particular is this? Is this on the Appalachian Trail or towards the end
Right,
of the
right,
race?
right at the start of the race, we leave
Hmm.
you leave Boone's Barrow, and then
Hmm.
you go about maybe a mile, 2 miles, and you hit that fire road, that access road that takes you to the top
Yep.
where the antenna is. That's a good incline. So I'm assuming that by the time you get to the top of there, your lungs are screaming.
They actually felt pretty good. But I
This
like
is awesome.
my favorite kind of terrain to run would be runnable uphill, and that would be
Runnable
it's
uphill,
on
okay.
the steepest end of that, but especially having done a lot of races out in Europe or like the mountain style races, like the idea of 20+% grade becomes not fun but normalized. So when you have that fire road, which is paved and steep, but steep enough that you can still run, that's kind of where I really like that terrain because it's challenging. It's not just a pure foot race. It's like a combo of muscle and aerobic fitness. And I guess on that given day, I felt really good in it. And I think it was that fire road where I was in maybe fourth or fifth place with one of my buddies, Trayson, who ended up getting fourth place in the race overall. And I had dropped him at the time and bridged the gap to, at that point, the top three in the race. So, yeah,
Fantastic.
I liked.
So when do you find the time to, like, most ultra runners will stop, take a break, grab some food, grab something to drink. At this pace, where do you find the time for that? Is there a strategy that you're doing that maybe we don't know about?
So this would be like mid-race fueling in particular.
Yes.
This question. I have the short answer is practiced what I ended up doing. And I think part of that entering like year 3 or 4 of ultra running, it's learning that to this point in my life, running has just been kind of an aerobic test with like a little bit of strategy for like, when to make your move. Whereas ultra running and marathon running, I think, is very much this as well. I just tend to do more ultras, so it's a little easier for me to picture it that way. But I think you learn that there's new things that get added to the mix that are part of performing well. And for me, that's nutrition has kind of been that biggest thing, which is you can't just go out there and be in shape to run, say a 5:30 at JFK. I actually think on that starting line, there's probably a lot more people at the front that could do that. It's also then taking that and making sure you're fueling your body to be able to do that. Because I found to this point, pretty much every ultra marathon I've done has been limited by like how much food I can take in and then how much energy I take from that. For me in particular, for this race, I did a lot of gels and I like have practiced taking them in runs. And I think one of the skills I've tried to hone over the last few years has been really practicing race caliber nutrition in kind of like any training runs, and this would be a training run of maybe longer than 90 minutes. So, really, even when your stomach doesn't feel it needs it, practicing just like, what does it feel to take a gel every 20 minutes? And like, really make sure you're hitting your grams of carbs and your sodium that you're gunning for. And yeah, on race day, just doing your best to like prepare your body for that. Because, eating.
So you're more of a fuel on the fly kind of guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No,
Okay.
Yeah, I like more solid food if I maybe need a lot and I'm not feeling good, but JFK, I felt good the whole time. So it's like, if I feel good, I don't want to stop. I want to be taking gels. I want to be continually moving.
Well, maybe where Harvey was going with this, Matt, because he's heard me talk about the JFK for 2 years now, is that they got some really great aid stations. So how hard is it to bypass these aid stations that got this smorgasbord of everything? Because you're trying to win the race, like, I'm just trying to survive. But do you like cross those aid stations like, oh my God, I want that cookie? Like, did they give you the cookie?
Great question. You kind of just got to put your blinders on and like not even look. It's like, nope, I like the people cheering and I'm not even looking at what they have. You just got to go.
They got everything. If when you get a little bit older like us, I'm closer to 50 here. And if you ever power hike the JFK, you can hang out at the aid stations. It's fantastic. It's really good. I think it's like mile 19 or 18. They got the these great cookies, and I just put them in my pack. I love them. But like, okay, so going back to your fueling, so you practice your fueling during your longer training runs. You're trying to take a gel every 20 minutes. Were you trying to hit a carbohydrate intake? Were you trying to hit a calorie intake? Like, how do you view fueling?
Yeah, and I've changed that over time as well. I used to be, when I first started ultra running, very calorie dependent just because it's what I knew, it's what I understood. But I gradually switched to carb counting, which, at a certain level, if you're kind of only eating like sugar, it's the same ratio. So it's really just kind of different numbers, the same thing. But I have honed in over time on like what I perceive to be my kind of carb intake per hour, and then sodium intake. I think sodium I'm still tinkering with because I find it's a lot more dependent on the weather, and it's
Oh,
also
really?
in its purest form from what I've talked to friends and what I've read through other kind of media outlets and what have you not. It's really like sodium in terms of concentration per liter of water, and so when your water intake changes, that's going to change how much you're taking. But for me, the rough end that I'm going for is between 90 to 100 grams of carbs an hour when I'm like really trying to perform at my top level. And then sodium has a wider range, but for JFK, I can say in particular, it was around 600 milligrams an hour or so. And what got interesting is I actually was at a point where I couldn't really drink water for the last few hours of the race. So I wasn't actually taking any water, but my gels were going down just fine. So something about what I practiced was working because my stomach didn't feel good. But just keep popping the gel every 20 minutes. It kept working. And it's like, I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to think about it. It's working and I'm still running. So you kind of just got to go.
We laugh because we've had a few athletes on over the last year, and one is our friend Corey Belmore, the world beer mile record holder.
Mm-hmm.
And he has something very similar where he practices running with a full gut. Like he grew up, his parents would always take him like last minute to like track practice. So he always had dinner and he was always practicing his entire life with a full stomach. And he's like, that's what really has made me run fast. It sucks, but I've been able to kind of like train myself that I can do it. So you can run faster than anybody else with his full, 4 liters of beer in your belly, or a liter of beer in your belly. But it's interesting. Like, and I know Floris, our friend Floris Gierman from Path Projects and the Personal Best program, and his Extra Mileless podcast, he did a whole like a series and episodes on carbs. And it was really eye-opening to me because I would say that he would be like a 50 gram to like a 70 gram runner. And then he tried it. He went up to like 90 grams, 115 grams, I think. And he saw his performance change. And that's what really opened his eyes to bring it back to us to say, folks, especially me, like, you're under fueling. I know for myself, I think when he first asked me, Todd, like, what's your fueling plan when I run a 4-hour marathon? And I'd say, I'd pop one gel. I think it was a UCAN every 45 minutes. And he's like, you're not getting enough carbs in. And I've upped the carbs now, and I'm probably around 70, 80 grams up in that area, maybe every 25 minutes, every 30 minutes. I've seen a big benefit, and slowly but surely trying to build that stomach, because it does suck to be eating gels when you don't really want to feel like it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny you even say practice running with a full stomach, because that is one of my earliest forms of training for my stomach, was literally just like eat a full meal and then just go for a run, and just it kind of sucks at first, but then you find after a while it doesn't feel good, but you get used to it. And I think that's really the fine line you're trying to ride in some of these long efforts, is like, you're never going to feel great, but how can we work with feeling okay? And kind of
I think that's a goal. That's something you just uncovered there, because you're right on. Like, maybe it is that type of I don't know, hardening yourself up, a little bit of grittiness. Can it be you don't need to buy the fancy shoes, you just have to go run with a full stomach and you'll get a performance benefit? Maybe.
I wouldn't say that's like the exact science, but there's something to be said for it.
So Matt, what's a typical training week look like for you, or training schedule? Do you go out there and do you put in a lot of miles? Are you the kind of guy that does a lot of cross training, a lot of just casual running, or what do you do?
Yeah, honestly, a little bit of all of those things. And I like to have kind of a firm skeleton in terms of like high level things we're going for. But I've found over time and I should say I'm self-coached. So I write all my own training plans, and I've found over time what things help me perform the best and keep me doing it and don't burn me out, or having like, I'd say high volume, but flexible in how we get it and what we do. And so I very much shape my training around the races I do. So I'm and actually, for example, right now, just starting to build up. So the last few months have actually been pretty nice, relaxed, still running 6 days a week with an off day, but not really shooting for any mileage, not any training. And then once we get into that, maybe 10 to 12 weeks out from a race, it's like, all right, now we really focus. So for me, the training always reflects the race I do. So if it's ultra marathon, we're probably doing a lot of really long 4 or 5 hour long runs on the weekends. If it's a road marathon, we're sticking to the roads, trying to run really fast tempos. So the workouts themselves, greatly vary depending on what the race is. And I think I like pursuing a lot of different types of races. So honestly, each training block can look really different. In terms of volume, I'd say my sweet spot right now is about 100 miles a week when I'm at my peak. That's like a really comfortable volume that as long as I'm kind of eating, sleeping, recovering, I find is pretty sustainable. The workouts, and I'd say having focused on trail ultras for the most part, workouts are generally, midweek trying to do like some form of speed work, whether that's honestly on a road, like track repeats, or maybe it's hill repeats on a trail, or just, like a fast finish, maybe hour plus long run. And then on the weekend, I'm really focusing on trying to find terrain that best simulates the race, and then just do a sustained effort at speed for that. So, having done a lot of mountain races, it's honestly go out for 4 to 5 hours if you have the time and just like practice running on steep mountains. Whereas for JFK, it was a lot more like, okay, this is a flatter race. Let's find like some flat trails and let's just work on just holding a good clip for a long time. So really for me, and so when I say like the skeleton is there, it's like I have volume that I'm shooting for. I build up and then I taper down for like 3 weeks before a race. And then honestly, it's all about customizing what those workouts and long runs are to the race. But kind of the fun side and what keeps me doing it is I've learned over time too that, the recovery and the easy, just kind of filler mileage days, keep those fun, run with friends, like don't worry as much, as long as you're getting the volume and not doing too hard, like it's okay for those to be flexible. And so over time, I found I don't really prescribe mileage to each day. I know what the workouts are, and it's like, all right, we just got to get to that number at the end of the week. And how we get there is honestly a little more flexible. And, working a full-time job on top of training too, it's like, your life doesn't always work out perfectly that you get to do your like 2-hour run when you want to. So let's be aware of that. Let's know that's coming, and let's like build in some flexibility. And I think over time, I've noticed when, life is busier outside of training, I do a lot of doubles because it's like, really if you're doing a Wednesday workout and a Saturday long run, Monday and Thursday and Friday, they don't need to be exact sciences. They don't need to be like very particular. They just need to add up to something, and you need to make sure. I've found actually, liking to run faster, my issue has never been running too slow. It's always been like, it's okay to like recover a little bit. It's okay for that Friday run to be a little slower than you want. So yeah, being honest with myself, making sure I'm getting recovery, and yeah, at a high level, that's kind of how I approach my training.
Sunday, September 14th, 2025, the Windsor Waterfront Half Marathon. It's the half marathon or 5K that you've been looking for. Harvey and I are ambassadors, and Harvey has been hitting the pavement hard. I think he signed up 3,000 people so far for the run. I don't know how many.
You hear that, Ryan? 3,000. I don't have an exact number. I know that I have more than 20, but I don't know the exact number. Hopefully closer to 40.
Is that 20 unique people, or did you sign up 20 times?
That is 20 people that I spread the word at work, spread the word on social media. I put my discount code on my social media so that people are stumbling upon it. I might have spammed a few people, so if I did spam you, I apologize, but sign up, use my discount code. But anybody who's listening to this show, let's give Todd a little hand and use his discount code.
And now you're going to put me on the spot. What's the discount code? I think I know. WWHMTM8.
Sounds right to me, Todd.
That's right. You'll get, I think it's $20 off your registration.
I believe it's a percentage, and the price just went up in January, sometime in January. So it's it's probably a little bit more than that now.
Well, there you go. You can get a good discount code and then come run with Harvey and myself. And we actually have an episode that we put out there that talks a little bit about the Windsor Waterfront Half Marathon. So you can check that out. It's going to be fantastic. Great time of year. If you're building for a fall marathon, it's at the perfect time in mid-September. If you run an October marathon, a November marathon, that's a good build for you.
Waterfront Plaza, it's going to be set up like a small little city. All the local run clubs are going to be representing. All the local running stores will be representing, along with all the sponsors. It's going to be that big city feel in small Windsor, Ontario, Canada.
And you heard it here. There's at least 30 people that signed up just because of Harvey. So that's 30 people that Harvey's got to chase down and beat on the course. But it's going to be great.
So you're a big workouts don't always go as you plan kind of guy.
Yeah.
Good.
I like to have a plan, but I acknowledge that plan can always change. And
Matt, when you're going through a week and it's a recovery day, a fun effort, how much variance in your pace would be a fun effort versus when you're running, like you're doing a training run or like a race specific run? Are you talking, is it like a minute per mile? Is it 3 minutes per mile? Like, what's that variation look like for you?
yeah. And the catch-all answer is it varies. But
Okay.
I've noticed, and I say that because I have naturally started doing a lot more like trail, like steeper runs. And I found once you start going uphill and above like a 10% gradient, you can kind of, what that
pace
upper end of the
doesn't
pace
matter.
looks like, it can go out the window. And so, even last week I was
Yeah.
doing, I just within the last month and a half moved back up to Seattle, Washington, which I went to college up
Okay.
here and just moved back. And so I took a buddy out to Tiger Mountain, which is about 20 minutes east of where I live. And, for example, that run, midweek training run, was like 13-minute mile pace, which for me, like on a flat run, would be unheard of. But it was dark. We were by headlamp. The trails were slick. It was dark. So like, there's so many factors that lead into that actual pace. So I've found like running off of effort is far more important because there's weather, there's trail conditions, there's light, there's so many things that go into what that pace is. And I think having target pace ranges works really well if you're doing kind of nothing but flat-ish road running. And so to that regard, I feel I've really honed in on what the variance is for, like, say, a flat run. And for me, I'd say if I'm doing like an easy run, like I feel good, I'm not pushing it, but like I'm letting my body go up to that limit of when it starts to feel like a workout, and to where maybe a like recovery effort is, that range for me is probably about a minute to a minute 30 per mile. But once you start adding trails, once you start adding hills, I've found it can get crazy and the numbers can start to make no sense. Honestly, I try not to make them make sense. It's like, as long as, if this is a recovery day, there's honestly no such thing as too easy. Like, I'd rather have you focus on recovery than push yourself too hard.
I like that you said that, because Harvey and I run a lot together. Harvey's a little bit faster than I am, and I'm always saying, hey, Harvey, we can never run slow enough. And so we got Matt's the verifiable evidence that we can run slower, Harvey. You don't have to be pushing me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't fully quote me on that, but the idea. Yeah. But to your point, I have found over time that I've found that for recovery efforts, there is almost no such thing as too slow. Like, especially at the end of the sport that I'm at, I've found a lot of people who are like really dead center training can kind of not really recover. Like, they'll do a workout and then all of a sudden their easy day or recovery day will be like 30 seconds per mile slower. And I'm like, it's like, that just kind of feels like the same effort to me. So I've really worked over time on, like, hard days are hard. Like, yeah, this is a workout. You're meant to push it. It should hurt. But then on that easy day, like, relax, like, take it easy. This is all about shaking your legs out and letting your body recover. And it's been an adjustment over time for me. But
I will slow down, Matt,
Yeah.
but if I don't get a sub 3 hour marathon in the next year, I'm calling you back.
Okay, well,
I'm
I have
gonna
some.
tell you
He's
you're wrong.
I have some
He's
advice
calling
on
you
what
back.
paces your tempo run should look like. So
Okay.
we'll talk about those first, and then we'll get to
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that we talk about tempo, because I think that's always, personally, like the folks that we met over the years, if I'm trying to knit together like a commonality for I would say an average, weekend warrior, someone training for their maybe fourth or fifth marathon. They're trying to gun for a better time. To me, everyone points towards this tempo run, and Harvey, I could look at you and we don't really do those tempo efforts. From your experience, what's the bread and butter workout that you think for a marathon that one must have?
Yeah, and it's funny. I feel like I talk to more friends about marathon training who I would not call like traditional competitive runners. It's honestly my friends who are getting into running and want to do a
Mm-hmm.
marathon, and they always like, "Oh, you run a lot. You're good at like I think you're good at this. Like, what would you do?" And it's funny because I have to like or really think about what I'd recommend, and my answer to them would be different than my friend who's run, a dozen marathons and is like trying to switch it up. So for me personally, like the bread and butter of a marathon build in particular is really hard, long tempos. And that for me is like, I'd say, I like the 3 week taper myself. So it's just like maybe 7 to 8 weeks out to 3 weeks out, like that 4 to 5 week range. I find for ultras, I'm very like long effort, but doesn't need to be specific. Like it just needs to be hard. Whereas marathons, I'm like, no, I want to do X, Y, Z. So I found a few workouts that I like to do. A few of them are and they all have fun names that are number related, so it's easy to remember. One of them is the 5-4-3-2-1, which I really like, which is like 5 mile effort at I've heard different pace ranges, but close to race pace, and then a mile float, and then 4 miles mile floats. At the end of that, you've almost run a marathon with a warm up and cool down. So I think that's a good microcosm. The long runs are almost at the length of the race, like they're really 20 to 22 miles, and the paces for me really are close to race. You're really just building your body up to running at marathon pace. For example, let's take Chicago as the previous example. I wouldn't say I executed in training perfectly, which is why when the race went south, it's not a huge surprise. But for me, it's like, okay, if the OTQ is 5:15 pace, which, very fast. But if we want to do that, I need to work in my tempos to make 5:15 pace feel normal. Because if you're going to say you can run this pace for 26 miles, it better feel comfortable for like 15. Because if it doesn't, we got some problems. Because yeah. The race will feel hard, but it shouldn't feel impossible until later on. So,
well, if for a second, if we want to spend, if you don't mind, like if you maybe dissect that Chicago Marathon, the Renegades that listening, I guarantee you, we all have one thing in common: that most of our races we totally blow up. Like new runners, we totally blow up. What was where did you encounter the struggle during Chicago? And when you look back, what do you think what did you learn from it? Like if you had to do it over again?
Yeah, and it's funny, the memory I have of that race is very similar to the next like a marathon I had, which was the California National Marathon, CIM 2023. And they're both very similar, but I blew up less at CIM. I ran 2:25, so it went a little better. But both those races, yeah, I'm very happy. But when you're gunning for a very specific time, it's
Absolutely
important to reflect on like, okay, why didn't we get there? And so both of these races in my head went very similar, and I have similar takeaways. I think one is I was gunning for the OTQ in this point, so I was like taking an arbitrary time in a way. It's like it's not something that came from within me that's like, in training, I feel I could do this. It's like we put a big goal on the board, irrelevant of maybe where I was at coming into that. So I think by nature of that, and I was very clear at both races, like we're going there to run this time. I don't care as much about like running a PR or something. Like we're putting it on the board that this is the time, we're going for that. So if you blow up, you blow up. Like we're not here to like, hedge our bets and pull up. So at both races, it was about halfway through the race. At Chicago, I'd say it was about mile 9 to 10. And the first sign was like, oh, like this pace feels hard. Like to my point, like the tempo should lead you to in a marathon, like, oh, mile 15, mile 16, you hopefully still feel pretty good because you still have a long way to go. You haven't hit the hard part. So when I hit mile 9 and I was like, I feel my body taking on stress. It's like, this is a good sign that something's going wrong. And then I'd say by mile 11, the paces for the same effort, the paces started to drop off. And then by halfway through the race, it was not just like 5 to 10 seconds per mile, it was like 20 to 30. And so it went from like a little off to big off. And then I think at a certain point, I just stopped fueling properly and started to get cramps. And then it was kind of, to say it was a complete disaster would also be underselling myself, but it was I think about a 20-minute positive split. So at a certain point mentally, it was like, I just want to finish. Like, it's not really about the times anymore.
Well, you just touched on something there. Like, it's really interesting. What I take away is there's a big goal that you put in front of you, that you knew that this is the goal that's out there in the world for me to be considered to do something, like to qualify for the Olympics. Whereas if it's a goal that, you're gunning for a PR or, something like you put all your bets in this race. And really that's a couple of the runners that we've had on Renegade. That's what they kind of say. When you're in a race, you're there to toe it on the line and leave it all out there. And sometimes amazing things happen. And sometimes it just, it doesn't happen. And that's what happens when you get those big goals. And it's funny, Matt, because I would say you're running amazing times compared to like the average runners and a 4-hour marathon or 4:30, but almost like the same kind of physical onset of, at mile 10, I didn't feel good. The paces are slower, but it's almost that same kind of, I don't know, the slow down or the tendency to slow down. What do you do when it gets rough? That, like, even in your longer ultras, is there a trick or a tip that keeps you loose to get the mind loose? Like, how do you get out of the well of despair sometimes that we can get into?
Yeah, and I'd say in ultra running, I think the sport exists because that mental space exists. Like, if you feel good for I have yet to touch the 100-mile distance, but I have ones I'm signed up for this year, so we will go there this year. But I don't think you can run for 15 to 20 or even longer and feel good the whole time. Like, if you do, I have more questions because it really is existing in that space of pain and finding comfort in it. I think, especially at the top end of the sport, I feel an athlete like Courtney Dauwalter, for example, like really is vocal about the pain cave. And I think that is true. And maybe the way I approach it is it's inevitable. And even in a marathon, like, it's inevitable, you're going to feel bad. And I think if you crumble at the first sight of that, then you are really not prepared for what this is. Because, like, you're always going to hit some form of pain. And it's really about understanding what that pain is and understanding that more of the time than not, I don't want to say all the time, but more of the time than not, it's that pain is not actually indicative of what your body and mind can do. So it's really kind of making peace with that pain and understanding that it's a temporary state, and that once you finish, you won't care. And one of my buddies in the sport, kind of one of my mentors, Chris, he kind of has helped me get into running a lot. And he, in a lot of training runs we've done together and just, having a beer after the run, has really talked to me a lot about, especially at the end of a race and an ultra, it's like, you're going to hurt no matter what. Like, it's going to hurt. That's a given. It's the question of, in your mind, can you convince yourself that running 30 seconds to a minute per mile faster, like just pushing a little harder, it will not make you feel any worse after this. Like, you're going to feel destroyed no matter what. And so it's really for that, I'd say, like, maybe the last third of the race is when, no matter the distance, like, that's when the going gets tough. Can you convince yourself and practice it? Because it doesn't always come intuitively. Like, I think it is pretty natural for humans to feel pain when subjected to that kind of thing. So it's like, you won't hurt anymore if you push harder. So can you really just mentally toughen up and just go for it? Just do it. And it's I found in my 2024 racing season, the number one thing I would have improved after, say, I take my CCC race that happened in August. Like, it was a mountainous 100K over in France. And then I was like, the race did not go according to plan. And I was like, honestly, the number one thing I would have changed is just been mentally tougher, because training went well. I felt good. Nutrition was good. Like, with 10 hours into the race, I was on the paces I wanted and it still fell apart. It's like, what would I have changed? It's like, honestly, just kind of suck it up and go. So even competing at the level I feel I am, it's still hard. Like it's not something that comes intuitive. And so I think to say I have an exact science of how to solve it would be a lie, but I've found you kind of just internally have to make peace with where you're at the end of a race. And so one of the other things I've worked on outside of training is, and I have had coaches in the past that did a good job of explaining this, is understanding that stress is stress, and to like perform your best, you have to do your best to come into the race as relaxed as possible. But understand that stress is more than just running. Like it's everything in your life is like adding a clump of stress. And so can you come to the line as relaxed as possible? And so I think JFK, one of the reasons it went really well is I did a good job of the week, month plus out. It's like, I just want to show up on the starting line feeling good. If I'm a little less fit than I want to be, that's fine. As long as I feel relaxed and mentally ready to just have a good time and like free myself of that burden, then I think that's how the best performance is going to happen.
So such amazing insight, Matt. You touched on so many things there. Harvey, like in my mind, it's so true, because I would say that folks will give you the advice of when it gets tough, you got to just get grittier, and you got to fight it. But I'm with you. And it's like, I heard that from Courtney as well, is it's going to get tough. Instead of fearing the tough, when it gets tough, say, hey, I knew you were going to be here. Like, don't surprise your body. Keep your body relaxed, the mind relaxed. It's going to get tough. I don't know. That was inspirational. I love it. I love those nuggets. What do you think, Harvey? Like,
I think Matt's practicing a little bit of witchcraft or something, because I can't figure it out sometimes. How do you shut off your brain? Your brain is always saying stop, and you're trying to say, shut up, brain, I can do this. But you figured it out. You figured out how to shut off that part of your brain and just keep on pushing hard right to the finish line. I need to work on that, definitely.
I'm still working on it. And one of my good friends and also runner who had a really good 2024 and I've had the chance to train with and listen to a lot is Rod Farvard. He got second at the Western States race, had a lot of good performances. And I was actually listening to an interview he did, I think it was on the Free Trail podcast shortly after Western States. And he was talking about both the Canyons race, which he and I both did, and then Western States. And he and his coach worked on like just turning his brain off. And like, it's again, not hard, but it's like, at like mile 80 of Western States, like, can you just like stop thinking? Like, because thinking takes energy, it's hard, and you're just allowing yourself to overthink it. Like, I think, and yeah, it's something that I'm working on, and I wouldn't say it's even easy for me. I'm still developing that, but it's like almost keep it simple. Like, just don't think too hard, because when you're say at mile 23 of a marathon, you're like right on the edge of like running a pace you want versus not. I find that constantly thinking about that pace allows yourself the room to like slow down. And if you just realize that, hey, I'm just going to run and I'm going to run the effort I feel I can, and whatever happens, happens, I think that is both more enjoyable and tends to lead to better results than like damage control, or like, oh, I need to run this exact split, or oh, I'm 3 seconds too slow at this quarter mile. It's like, no, don't worry about that. I think you can't look at the fine details and miss the whole picture.
I practiced the other day. I did an out and back, just a half marathon. But when I turned around, I got to my halfway point, turned around. All of a sudden, the wind changed directions, dead on. The temperature dropped, and I just kept thinking, my phone's in my pocket. I can call for a ride. But then I kept thinking, no, all I got to do is get a little bit further. And then I got to get a little bit further, then a little bit further. And for once, this was the first time I could tell my brain, shut up, you can do this.
And you listen to yourself, Harvey?
I did.
I give you credit. I give you credit.
I did, yes. Matt, I want to talk shoes. You got a shoe handy? You got your shoes handy?
I do.
You got picked up, didn't you?
Yes.
You got a great sponsorship. You want to tell us a little bit about that? Tell us the story behind that?
Yes. Yeah. So this is my second year with them. I have been running for Norda, a Canadian shoe company. They are based out of Montreal. They only make trail shoes, which is funny because even right before this podcast, I did a road run and I still wear them for roads. So they're trail shoes, but they work for roads. But yeah, no, they're a great company. They're founded by this couple, Nick and Wella, who I developed a good relationship with. But they, yeah, have been, I think, selling shoes for about 4 years, and they make extremely high quality shoes. They're definitely in the space, definitely on the more expensive end for a single pair of shoes, but I really like them because they last forever. They're very durable, and they make all their products with Dyneema, which is extremely strong, tough. I've put in, gosh, we'll do the miles and the kilometers. I think I put in like over 1,000 kilometers in the first pair of shoes I have with them, and they still work and feel good. So they're very durable. And yeah, I have been racing, especially at the kind of ultra distance. I've been racing in their shoes for a year and a half, and I've really loved it. Their newest shoe they're coming out with, the 005, which will be released in, I believe, March, is our first endeavor into the super shoe space. It does not have a carbon plate, but it is extremely high response foam. And I, for example, raced JFK in it. I wouldn't have picked a single different shoe to wear. And I actually, at the top end of the field, I think I was one of the only, if not the only guy in like the top 10 who did not change shoes at JFK, because it's a very common thing to switch from trail shoes, because the first 50 miles of JFK is a trail, to then like a road super shoe, because 15 miles on, you're on road. But this pair of trail shoes that Norda had made, the 005s, were so good. They honestly felt comparable to like running in a pair of Alpha Flies or Vapor Flies, which I traditionally run my marathons in. So they're the real deal. I love them.
What elements draw you to the Norda? The shoe design. What is it about the shoe that you liked?
Yeah, and in running and in other things in my life, I am an engineer by trade, and so I like a good design, and I like things that are like functionality has to be number one. Like, do they work for the basic thing? And for a running shoe, it's like, does it feel good? Does it support my shoe? Does it fit? And so for a trail running shoe, they're extremely grippy, they're extremely durable. They feel good. Like, I put them on, like on even their 001s, their flagship shoe. Like, I just put them on and I forget they're there. And that's, to me, kind of the goal of a good shoe. Like, I don't want to feel it. I just want it to be there and we feel good. But then if you can nail that like functional element, can you then like still look good? Like, I think it's a shoe. There's still, to me, some fashion element to it. And so I like that they have the functionality is first and foremost, but they also have really fun color waves. They have really good design. I think whoever does their color design does a great job, because they do what I wish other shoe companies would do, which is, you have a good product, don't iterate it, don't change it. Like, people like it.
Yeah, we agree.
You can just keep making that. But what Norda does is they release different color waves of the shoe. So the function of what it is remains the same, and they just give you like a new refresh on it. So I like that they do that.
Well, looking at it too, like I've seen the advertisements, we've seen the shoes, and we would love to have Norda come on the podcast and talk to us all about the brand. We're from Canada, so like, I think I sent Nick an email once saying, "Hey, we're Canadian, we'd like to get you on our podcast." But what I like about it looks like it's got a wide toe box, looks like it's roomy. I'm with you. I love the style. The style just looks like clean. It looks aggressive. It just gets that nice feeling about it. That's different than some of the other shoes that are out there. And I noticed I looked like a lot of grip. So I think that's what's key sometimes in our trail shoes. Most of the time we're running in ultra trail shoes. Lately, I've been running in some Paluvas from Mark Sisson and his son. Those are the 5-toe shoes. They're pretty fun. And what I kind of like about shoes, and Harvey and I are like, talk a lot about the shoes, just mixing them all up, trying all kinds of different ones. It's fun to like test this one out, test that one out. But you're right. We had Golden Harper on earlier last year, and we were talking to him a little bit about like, Golden, we love the Escalante ones. Like, why did you change them? And he kind of gave us the whole like why they had to change them and whatnot. I'm like, can you actually go find that last and remake them, reopen an ultra aftermarket brand or something like that? We were laughing, having fun about it.
Yeah, and I know it's hard and Norda has definitely, even especially being on the athlete front, they come to us with like minor changes before they release them commercially, and so they definitely have hinted at certain things they want to fix. And for example, Norda their 001s have a pretty flimsy ankle collar, which I actually love personally. I think I enjoy a minimal ankle feel, but I know some people that don't like that as much. So they've even talked about like iterating that, iterating the response of the foam. But yeah, I think of I don't not even here to call it, but like just certain other brands in the past that I've worn a lot of shoes for they've had like a really good shoe and then they just completely changed it. And it's like, oh, now I don't want to wear this shoe anymore. Yeah, can I go back to that?
So were you kind of like looking for a sponsorship? Were you looking for them, or did they come find you? How did this all go down?
A little bit of both. This was mid 2023. They were actually doing a shoe release tours because they're a smaller brand. They like to go to more independent running stores and demo out their shoes. So they were at that time I was living in Oakland, California, and so they came to a really nice running store in the Oakland Bay Area called Renegade Running, and they did like a little group run. And I'd heard a lot from friends about Norda. But never run to them myself. And I'd say prior to being sponsored, when I was maybe about a year and a half, like very aggressive racing, but no sponsor, I did try 5, 6, 7 different trail running shoe brands. And I found I liked a lot of them, but I didn't love any of them. They all did something good, but there was never one that stuck out. And so I met Nick and Willa at this event in Oakland, and it happened to have a race element. And they're like, oh, the winner of the race gets a free pair of trail shoes. So it was at literally my local park that I've run thousands of miles in, and I was like, I fancy my odds in this race. Like I know these trails well, so I got the free pair of shoes and then hung out with them, and they were like, oh, what else do you have in your calendar? And then I was like, oh, I'm going out to run the CCC 100K race, which is the kind of I call the little sister of UTMB, the full 100-mile race out there. And they're like, oh, we'll be out there. And so I, got to hang out with them in Chamonix, interacted with the team. And then after the race, I ended up meeting up with Nick, and he was like, yeah, we want you to join the team. So it was good because there was definitely a performance element to it, but it was much more a like personal relationship. Like, oh, we like it. And I think what I like about Norda, especially having just had a lot of friends who were sponsored in the space, and heard their sometimes less than great experiences, with a bigger company, say a Nike or a Hoka or something of that magnitude. They have the ability to provide a lot of support, but at the same time it is pretty explicitly performance driven, and you don't really make relationships with people who are like the founder. You make relationships with people who are in charge of that team. Whereas with Norda, they're a much smaller, like a husband-wife duo who made this company. So by nature of it, they don't have the budget that another larger company has. But what they do have is like a really good community, good communication with everyone they have, and clearly show a passion for what they do. And so I found in every aspect of my life, I really like working with people who are passionate about what they do. So it was a brand that I felt very good representing, and they made it clear that they care about performance. They want to see us do well, but it's like this is much more finding a team that is both high performing and really loves the brand and each other and just represents who we are well. So it was just I now entering year 2 is just a very good meeting of the two, and it's like a brand that I feel really good representing.
Yeah, like aligning to a brand makes a lot, that it speaks to your core DNA values. And one thing I noticed when you ran the JFK, I noticed in the pictures that you had some Path Project shorts on. Mm-hmm. Were you wearing? Do you wear the Graves, or which one's your favorite to race in?
I think this is a good representative Path. I don't even have a favorite because I just like all of them. Like
nice
all of their shorts, yeah. And I like my whole running shorts drawer. Like I don't even look at what the shorts are. I just pick them out. It's like, yeah, these are good.
Grab them,
put them on. It's like it doesn't matter. I think I am honestly trying to remember. I think the Sykes are the little whatever the like thinner fabric is. I think those are the Sykes. Those are maybe my more racing short because they're just a little lighter. But I love the Graves as well. Like all Path shorts are good.
Like I just love them, and we wear them all the time for everything. It's just like the little details, like the pockets. The pockets mean everything in the running shorts to me. And I bought myself a Graves for the JFK. The pockets were even better in them, so like I was able to put in all my gels in there, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, like the material, it breathes. We love Path Projects. Flores is a great friend of the podcast, and he's always hooking us up with some nice new shirts and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I think nowadays Harvey laughs at me because my entire wardrobe is Path Projects. I just told Flores, you got to make a golf shirt for work because I'm an engineer too, Matt. So like I got to go to work. I can't wear my Path Projects all the time. But so Flores, if you're listening, we need some Path Project golf shirts.
Well, I've actually found a way to wear Path at work because I actually just started a new job as an inspector for the city here, and I'm actually wearing one of the new they call it the Le Mans hoodie. It's like the fleece layer.
I was thinking that was a Le Mans hoodie.
Yeah. And it's a great mid layer. Like I found great mid layer. So I think Path has, even since the time I started partnering with them to now, in a good evolved to still making the good running stuff and kind of introducing the more lifestyle wear. And so especially in like a colder climate area, like all the winter gear they're making, I'm like, yes, Flores, you keep making more. This is good.
I know we're running here just about an hour, so we don't want to keep you. Maybe Harvey, do you have one or two last questions for Matt, and then we'll.
So you kind of touched on your training plan, what you're doing currently. What's your next big race? What's next for Matt?
Yeah, I actually have my entire 2025 mapped out pretty well. I have entering year 4 of competitive ultra running, and through that have kind of learned what I want to do. And I found I've raced a lot, which has been good the last few years, but this year it's like, all right, let's hone in on a few goals and let's really go after those. And built into that, I just moved back up to Seattle, Washington. I went to college up here, and had always kind of moved back. So in the spirit of staying local, my first big race of the season will be the Gorge Waterfalls 100K, which takes place in mid-April, just outside of Portland. I am doing a race the month before, which is the Chuckanut 50K up in Bellingham, Washington, which is another really competitive one. But the Gorge Waterfalls 100K, and how I approach training is I go for A races, and so for me it's okay, Gorge is the A race. I still want to do well at Chuckanut, which is about a month before, but we acknowledge it's a training effort for this other race. So I'm very good about defining what the A race is, and then what is a build up to that. Beyond that Gorge Waterfalls 100K is the U.S. Mountain Ultra Trail qualifier for the World Mountain Trail Championships. So the top 2 at that race would qualify to run at the Long Trail World Championships, which are this September in Spain. I by no means assume or expect it will go well, but I go into it if the race goes well, I get to go to Spain. So that is nice. What we're shooting for. If that does not happen, which is a very real reality because there's a lot of really fast guys going after that, I am currently signed up for UTMB, which will be my debut 100-mile effort this August. I've done CCC, which is the 100K version, the last 2 years, and so I felt really comfortable with it, and have kind of felt for the last few years that I've been ready to step up to that 100-mile distance, which it seems inevitably that anyone who gets into ultra running is building up to that. So I feel I'm ready, and I feel confident, and I'm not kind of scared away from it. So that will, if all goes according to as is scheduled, I'll be lining up in Chamonix this August to do the big loop. But in the spirit of also loving marathons, my plan is to also do the New York Marathon later this year. So got a little bit of everything this year. So
keep it interesting. And Matt, we're with you, man. I think Carl told us his famous line, 100 miles isn't that far. It's not that far. You've already done a 50. You've done 100K. You're there. It's just a couple more minutes. No worries.
Yeah. Couple minutes, couple hours.
Yeah. Couple hours. I know Harvey's done a couple 100 miles. You've done 300 miles, right, Harv?
In one shot, I've only done 2. Only the same direction. They're flat with Essex County, 100 miles. But this guy, Casey, he was on this podcast as well. He always picks the hottest day of the year. And you got to try and do 100 miles. You're melting on the asphalt. You think it's hard to run in the mountains? Yeah, I'm sure it is. But try the asphalt when it's sticking to your shoes.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty.
It takes me 2 days to do it.
Yeah, I've attempted it, Matt, but I sleep too much, and so I usually tap out and find Harvey the next day and help him just kind of finish. You got to get moving here.
I slept in a McDonald's drive-through or two.
We're going to definitely be looking forward to seeing your your 2025 shape up and unfold. The New York City, I've done 3. I did one last year. It's a great course, and you'll dominate that course. It's really a trail runner. There's some hills, a little bit on the bridges and whatnot, but the energy of that city is so great.
Yeah.
Have you done New York before? Would that be your first?
I have not. Yeah,
New
this will be my first New York I've done. This will be my third major. I did Boston this past year as well. So, yeah, this will be, and then
Well,
Chicago previously.
what I like about you, Matt, is what I love about your running story is a track. You come from a track background, and Dave Roach, who was talking about this on his podcast, is been beating the drum of to get super fast for these ultra events. You probably listen to the same podcast, hear the same stuff, but to be a super fast miler, a super fast 5K, a super fast 10K, get super fast, and then translate that into the 100-mile distance. And what he did this summer at Leadville was, pretty amazing. But that was one of the key elements he said. Is that something that you've taken away to say, to get faster at the shorter distances to help you on these longer distances? It's kind of like counterintuitive when newbies like us listen.
Um, I think the message behind that I would agree with, and maybe the way I phrase it is like speed is speed, and akin to that is like fitness is fitness. Like you can refine it to what exactly it is, but at the end of the day, it's like maybe a better way to say it is like it never hurts to be able to do this other thing. Like it can't be that. And I for example, I did a track 5K 8 days before I did the CCC 100K a few years ago.
Okay.
And I remember just like, this is like the polar opposite race. Like I have no fitness for this 5K, and it still went well. And I was actually knocking on the door some of the times I'd run in college when I just focused on that. It's like, okay, it was a huge boost. It's like, okay, we have not been cultivating this as much, but it still went well. So I think having range never hurts. And maybe the way I would approach each of them, and maybe I'm also like taking the fast effort and translating it to longer stuff, is like when you're doing speed work, you really got to understand what you're trying to cultivate in it and understand that if you kind of overdo it on the shorter end, it's not as bad. So for me, it's like when I'm building for JFK, it's just very intuitive for me to do like mile repeats or a workout similar to that. And it's like the goal is just turnover. So as long as you can get that turnover, it's a good sign. And yeah, you don't have to run this exact pace for a 50-mile, but it's good to just get the legs to practice. And if it comes naturally to you, all the better.
Fantastic. I got a question for you about your running journey and your running career so far. Who do you admire most in from the running community, and what is it about them that you admire, that you look up to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll give the cheap answer, but I'll still give maybe more of an answer. The cheap answer is everyone and no one at the same time, because I have, and that is actually how I like approach racing, which is I have profound respect for anyone out there, and honestly, that's irrelevant of like top end, back end. I think anyone who's willing to toe the line at a race like that is clearly demonstrated the same energy that I have. I think I happen to have a little more natural talent, and that's why I think like what a good race is so dependent on who you are and what you're going for. But at the same time, it's like fear no one and like don't put anyone on a pedestal. And so the people that I admire are ones that like I like to take things that they do and like, oh, I really appreciate that they did that, but be very clear to like not idolize them or like, oh, they can't do that. But I wouldn't say there's been like one clear person that's like, this is who I'm building my career off of. I've really taken bits and pieces out of everyone. But I already name dropped him, and I think I go to him a lot. So one guy I really admire is Rod Farvard. I've had the chance to train with him a lot, and he, I think, comes from a similar breadth to what I can feel, which is trains really hard, has done really well, but he had a lot of good performances and never had a great performance. And then this year just really kind of broke through and had a couple of insanely great performances. And it's like me and a lot of other friends around him, like a lot of people like, oh, wow, this guy's coming from nowhere. And we're like, no. Like I've been following him for years. Like it's clear this is what he's building to. And maybe the traits that I appreciate about him are extreme dedication to training. Like everything is how can this improve what I'm doing. It also has to be like a deep love of it. Like I think, I mean, a lot of people in the ultra space, I feel like that's pretty easy to, if you're willing to do it, it's usually a sign that you love it, because I don't really see a lot of people who are just doing it because I'm good at it. And it's like, if you want to run 100 miles, you better like it. But he has that passion, having that passion in the way you talk about running. Yeah, it's clear that they enjoy this. And yeah, and to that, like refining the details, like he in particular, talking to him about like how he approaches long runs, and it's like it should be like a pure race simulation. So if you have an aid station every like 10 miles, let's stop at the car and let's like change packs every 10 miles. Like let's do everything to the point where you are running the race. And I know I appreciate that, because that's not how I approach running. So it's different than what I do. But I like the people who do different things than me, because I get to take it away. It's like for me, I tend to like my long runs to be more adventurous, and like I do the sport because it's fun and it's different. And if you sacrifice some performance, I think that's something I'm generally willing to make tiny cuts. But his commitment to like, I love it, but like no, we are really practicing, it is something I really admire.
That's a really great answer, and you're right. Like to almost have a bunch of mentors, a bunch of people that you pull a little bit out of and you make it yourself, because I think that's a key element. And you touched on something too. I'll put it out there. Yeah, it's not about putting someone on a pedestal, right? Because everyone's human, and you know what? It's like what you can learn from them. And I love that. I love what you shared there.
Oh yeah. I had Oh, please.
I had one question. So on the Renegade, I would say that most of our audience would be, amateur, non-elite runners, weekend warriors, kind of new to the sport. What's one piece of advice that you could offer some budding new ultra runner, trail runner that, looking back at a younger version of Matt, you're like, now I know this. What advice would you offer this new ultra runner?
Good question. And I'd say this maybe is like a message that I've retaught myself and had to redefine it. And I'd say it's nothing new, but it's understanding the core principles is always, you got to go back to that. And it's like, do what you enjoy, because in doing that, you will keep doing it and keep wanting to improve. And I think for me, and honestly, the way I've approached training has even iterated a lot over the last few years. And on paper, it looks similar, but the way that I feel about it is, I did get hyper specific. I was like, okay, we're really pushing for this mileage. We're really doing this workout. And after a while, it was like, I like it, but I wouldn't say I like love it. And what keeps me coming back to sport, what keeps me engaged, is going back to the reasons why I started doing it and why I keep loving it. And so even just particular pulling from JFK, it was like, yeah, maybe like 4 weeks out from the race, I had wrote out this nice training block. And, maybe even for a lot of people who are newer to the sport, it's common to like have a coach like write out a training plan for you, or to go online and pull something out. And I think for me, my big advice is, don't be afraid to change that plan a little bit. Like, don't feel this need to do exactly what's written out. I think it's good to have that plan and follow it as closely as possible, because there's a reason it's that way. But for me, what's helped me, and even I felt was different from this race versus other ones, is really in training, like on long runs, go out there and just do something you enjoy, because it will keep you wanting to keep doing it. I find when people subject themselves to like too much that they don't want to do, you get burnt out and you don't want to do it as well. And I think this sport is built around just long-term, years and years and years of training. So keep it fresh, keep it fun. The more fitness you build over time, the better you'll do. So just, you want to keep coming back to it. So keep giving yourself a reason to come back to it.
I love it. I was going to say, Matt, where can folks find you? Find more about Matt? Where are you on socials?
Yes, my chief answer is always IRL. Say hi to me in person. Whenever I'm at a race, I love to talk to anyone. That being said, I'm pretty much only active on Instagram. My username is @Mateo_Seidel. And then I have Strava as well, as seemingly everyone in the running space does. But otherwise, I try to keep it pretty simple and not go all over the place. I'm more minimalist in my approach to many things. So.
And there's a lot of goodness in that too. Like we can overcomplicate life. Keeping it simple, it means everything.
Keep it simple in every aspect.
Runners can do a terrible job. Harvey and I kept it pretty complicated when we first started running. Nowadays, it's a lot more simpler, right, Harv?
Yeah, go out there, just keep your feet moving, time on your feet.
That's right, and run with a friend. That's
Run with a friend. Yeah.
We really appreciate your time, Matt. Like, we could have talked to you for 3 hours, and maybe we'll get you to come back on the podcast as your year's progressing. And
happily.
How maybe debrief from your race. How did it go? What'd you learn? I'm fascinated for you because you're 28 years old, Matt. You're fast. You're already running amazing times. And what we take away from the ultra running distance is that, greatness usually comes with more and more time. You're already fast at this age. You can stay healthy, and you're building that base in your experience. Sky's the limit for you, Matt. That's what I'm so excited to watch.
Yeah, and that's how also I've approached racing. I found maybe last year, early in the season, I was like, all right, I have very high expectations for myself, and the races kept coming up a little bit short, and I was like, like it was a little frustrating at first, and then I was like, no, like every race, my reflection is more experience would have helped me. So understanding that races are more of just like practice efforts, and over time, the way to get better is just keep doing it and keep learning. And so as long as you don't try the exact same thing and expect something different, then that'll be good. So yeah, I'm excited for this season. I feel like I'm approaching it a little differently in the past, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, we're gonna be cheering for you, Matt. We're gonna be cheering you on at your debut 100 mile, and definitely want to keep your eyes open here at the Gorge 100K coming up. So good luck, and we thank you for being a renegade.
Who knows? We might see you in New York. Last year I didn't run. Todd ran. I might put my name in again this year, but last year I volunteered. So who knows? You might see me there as a runner or a volunteer.
Oh yeah, no, the only caveat to going to New York would be if I did qualify for the World's team, which would be sweet and is the goal. Right. But that race is at the end of September, so I was like, doing New York like 5 or 6 weeks after I think it's an 80-kilometer race with 20,000 feet of climbing, so it's kind of the exact opposite of a marathon. So it's like, okay, but I'd still want to do a fall marathon, so it'd be CIM that I pursued. But I actually have one of my best friends getting married on the East Coast the week before New York, no matter what. So I would probably be out at New York no matter what. Whether we race or not, it's a different story.
Yeah, volunteering is fun. If you ever get out there and you don't get a bib, it's fun. I wouldn't recommend doing the aid stations. That's all.
So Harvey and his wife volunteered at like mile 10. Was it mile 10, Harv?
Mile 6, I think.
Mile 6,
it was very early, yeah.
And if you could just imagine the sea of cups and Gatorade everywhere, it's just a mess.
We were wearing the Gatorade.
I think they're still sticky.
Yeah.
But I got super lucky. Like I put my name in for New York, and I got my ballot pulled. So that's why I ran it, because historically the 2 other years, Harvey and I fundraised for his daughter's Tourette Society, and it was a great way to raise some funds and awareness, and also run the New York City Marathon. So if we get our name pulled, maybe we'll be back there. And I'm also Flores keeps talking about running a downhill marathon this fall, so I might join him and try to run a downhill marathon. I need all the help I can get, Matt. Like I need gravity, I need momentum, I need frictionless surface. We're gonna have to. What did Dave Roach said? He kind of scienced his win. We're engineers. We got to engineer our win. Well, this is what we got to do. Like we'll figure that out. We'll talk to Norda. Maybe Norda can get some
they can figure
nitrogen foam or something. Like, I don't know. We dove in. We're shoe nerds as much as a shoe nerd can be. And the more you dig into it, the carbon fiber plate, originally I thought the carbon fiber plate would do a lot, but the engineer in me says, well, that's only would actually do something. Is it like if it's convex and you can get a little bit of like pop from it, you don't really get that. And it's not really anchored. So you're basically just running with a piece of plastic under you or carbon. It's the foam. The foam is everything.
That foam is killer.
Yeah, my answer for carbon is dependent on if it's road or trail. I think my opinion is trail racing shoes don't need carbon in them, because your surface is so variable that I find that if I have carbon and I hit like a really rocky terrain, I'm just like clacking and not really feeling the rocks. Versus, for a road, I think I race in Alpha Flies and Vapor Flies when I do marathon. So I see the benefit in it for a fat marathon, but I think the meat and potatoes is the foam. Like if you have good foam, you have 90-something% of a great shoe, no matter what.
Matt, that we didn't get into is Todd and I are both running London here in a few months. So
nice.
That'll be our next world major, and that'll be I'm going to practice your techniques here. I got them written down, and I'm going to see what I can do.
Yeah. Just don't quote me if it doesn't go well. Quote me if it goes well, and then otherwise.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Podcast, and we'd love to hear from you. Send us a note. RunegadePodcast@gmail.com. That's RUNEGADE podcast@gmail.com. And we'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. You can check out our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And remember, in a world of runners, be a renegade.